In 2014, after hearing all the horror stories about the deep web, I wanted to check it out myself. In a way, I kind of expected nothing other than the scam sites for assassins, people requesting child pornography, and some underground markets. However, I prepared for the worst, and frankly, I was more worried about getting in trouble by authorities rather than having my mind bleached for the near future. Even after 2 or 3 hours of procrastination, nothing prepared me for what I saw. It was during the middle of the day when I began my search. Of course, there's no deep web Google or anything, but rather a wiki with a lot of links. The links are different than the links you may know of. These links have no way of knowing what lays behind it, just numbers and text at the end. It was boring at first, a lot of dead sites. More than expected eBay-style markets for weapons, military-grade weapons even, services, and of course, drugs. I came across a chat room where I saw a darker side of people I never thought was possible. So many people that were mentally ill, threatening others, requesting child pornography. It was truly disgusting. 2 hours later, I came across one site that ended my little adventure in the wastes of human consciousness. A cult site, perhaps, with little info other than an email address and some religious mumbo-jumbo. However, there was a video embedded in the site's homepage. Like a naive child, I clicked it without a care in the world. The video was shot with a crappy video camera. Perhaps it was shot in the early to mid-2000s. It was a man with a mask and a knife. As quickly as that scene showed, another presented itself. He was cutting something in similar fashion to a butcher shop. It was then and there I realized the body was bipedal and without fur. It was a human being. He was violently cutting at the legs, followed by the screams of this person. A new scene showed the decapitation of the head. Another shot of the man with the mask, followed by a picture of a church with a weird symbol. This was a cult recruiting website. It was followed by more bodies being cut up and hung in ways more gruesome than you may expect. Shortly after, I turned my computer off and I stayed off it for quite some time. This was my first and last visit to the deep web. I have never contemplated going back since. Number 2. I am a computer technician by profession. I work for a company that is contracted by local businesses and private consumers to set up internet connections, install software, and repair any sort of computer problems that they can come up with. So naturally, I get all kinds of crazy stories and problems that these people can come up with. I swear, some of these people just don't know how to work a computer, even in this day and age. Anyway, one day I get a call from a local business complaining that their internet is acting up and that they must have a virus. So I shake my head, thinking that someone must have unplugged a network cable or downloaded a Trojan horse accidentally, get up and drive over to the business to address the problem. As soon as I arrive, the man who called me immediately spots me and starts going on and on about hackers and how much he hates Microsoft Windows and how many viruses it creates and all that nonsense that I usually receive when addressing business problems. He leads me to his computer and I pull out my laptop and sit down in front of it and begin to work. He tells me good luck and walks away to go do whatever it is he does in his downtime. I open up the browser he uses, Internet Explorer to no surprise, and it opens up a blank page. He doesn't even have a home page. So I try connecting to google.com. 404 error. Alright, well I know that google.com definitely exists, so there's a problem with his internet connection. I open his network and sharing center to see if he has a built-in troubleshooter to diagnose the problem. But I give myself a well-deserved facepalm when I see that he isn't connected to any network at all. So I search for networks and find a few wireless connections for him to connect to. They're all web encrypted and I'm almost positive that he doesn't know the key. So I break out my laptop and run a web cracking tool to get his computer up and running again. As I'm waiting for my tool to find the web key, another network suddenly shows up on my computer. This one has an unprotected password consisting of random letters and numbers. Now, I'm extremely bored waiting for this guy to return, so I decided to connect to it and take a little look around to see where this is coming from. I connect without problems and open up my toolkit of cracking tools to see if I can find a source for this connection. As I'm having fun hacking away at this unprotected network, my computer freezes up. Only for a second or two, but this doesn't happen much and it caught me by surprise. I shrugged it off as this poor internet speed up here and kept it going. A couple minutes later, however, it happened again, and a few minutes after that once again. Each time getting longer and longer. Weird, I thought to myself. What's with this network? It was then that things started getting really interesting. After the long string of pauses, my screen flickered a little bit and, out of nowhere, my browser opened by itself. Now I was worried that I had somehow infected my computer in some kind of malware by connecting to this network, and I proceeded to close the browser and began to disconnect from the network before anything worse could happen. But I couldn't disconnect. No matter how many times I clicked the little disconnect button, my computer didn't respond, despite everything else on my computer screen running fine. Fuck, I thought to myself. This is gonna be a long day. And just as I was about to hit the power button on my laptop to perform a hard reset, my browser opened again, this time with a little chat box opening. "Hello," it said. I stared at the screen for a couple seconds, not quite knowing what was going on. "I want to talk to you." Now, I had heard about these AI programs that have all these programmed responses to simulate a conversation with people, and I was not impressed. This was one nasty virus. "You need to leave this network now. This is your last warning." Maybe an automated security program designed to keep hackers out? I'll have to admit, I was impressed with it. I'd never seen anything like this before. "I'm telling you one last time. Leave now." I don't know what made me do it, but I responded to the program. Or what? The next response scared me more than anything in this world ever has. The program began listing information about me. My name, address, telephone number, credit card information, my parents' names, their address. My heart sank in my chest, and all the color immediately left my face. I couldn't move, I just sat there, paralyzed with fear. But what came next was even worse. "Don't look at me like that." My webcam was on. "You really shouldn't stare. You might see something you regret." Suddenly, the most horrifying images you could ever imagine flashed on my screen. Images of disemboweled humans, human sacrifice, detached limbs, cannibals eating people, video clips of mass suicides and firing lines. My heart was racing. My body was shaking in utter fear of the images I was being shown. They're seared in my brain. These were things that no one should ever see. I mustered the strength I had left and hit the power button on my computer and slammed it shut. I ran to the bathroom and threw up a couple times. I was drenched in sweat. I could barely compose myself. It took me about 20 minutes to go back to my computer, and even then, I had a hard time getting near it. I looked over at my client's computer and it was connected to the wireless network I was cracking earlier. It was working fine now. Just then my client returned and thanked me for fixing his internet. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my laptop and left. Number 3. So I decided to visit the deep web. The dark web. Whatever the fuck it's called, you know what I'm talking about. The internet's lowest circle of hell. The place where pathologies abound, where pedophiles and drug dealers rub elbows with arms merchants and killers for hire. My purpose? Call it morbid curiosity. I was looking for the most extreme content I could find. I consider myself a student of the human condition and am fascinated by man's darker urges, his apparent hatred of himself. I wanted to measure the depths of his depravity and see what I could find. Knowledge for its own sake, or something. I come from a wealthy family and have never known want. Money was never a problem for me. I figured I would have to pay for my curiosity and load it up on a web cache and Bitcoin. Several $1,000s worth. I won't detail the directions to this dark web. If you have the desire, it only takes a little bit of research. You'll also want to use a throwaway computer unless you're a little tech savvy. I was burned more than a few times, but I anticipated as much. After 2 weeks of searching and being continuously ripped off, I finally came across something pretty interesting. I was looking for the so-called red rooms, and after some exchanges with a certain someone on a certain message board, I was provided with a link to a live stream. He assured me it was genuine and unlike anything I had ever seen. I've no doubt it was real. If you saw it, you would know. It cost me a mere $500. The camera displayed a room about the size of a large bedroom. Mulch covered the floor. What appeared to be a giant rock took up one corner. Opposite this was a kid's swimming pool filled with water. I couldn't even imagine what was about to take place. Suddenly, a portion of the ceiling disappeared, and a girl, upside down, was lowered into the room. She was suspended by the feet from what looked like giant forceps. Her hands were bound behind her back and tape covered her mouth. She looked to be about 20 years old, maybe younger. Needless to say, she was terrified. Nothing happened for a few seconds. Then, from under the rock, a head appeared. It was a snake. An anaconda, I believe. Slowly, very slowly, he emerged from his hide, forked tongue tasting the air. The girl's eyes bulged from her head with the most profound terror I have ever seen. The snake continued his creeping advance. He was fucking huge. He had to be at least 30 feet long. His face rose to within inches of her, tongue darting in and out. He loomed above her, all coiled aggression. Mercifully, she fainted. Whatever was holding the forceps began to shake the girl, like someone dangling a toy in front of a cat. The snake's head pulled back slightly, tongue still flickering. He remained still for a few long seconds, and then, without warning, he struck. His jaws clamped down on her throat, and his body whipped around her with tremendous speed. He took her to the floor and proceeded to squeeze the life from her as the giant forceps were lifted from the room and the ceiling panel replaced. I watched, stunned, as the snake uncoiled and released his teeth from her throat. He then unhinged his jaw and began to swallow her whole. The entire process took less than 5 minutes. And it was all bought and paid for by me. See you in hell, I guess. Number 4. I'm posting this through a proxy, so don't even think about getting cute and trying to find me. I've got enough trouble with people trying to find me as it is. It all started a few months ago when I found a good source of amphetamines on a deep web marketplace I won't name. I live in a town so small and bland that even the local high school kids don't bother selling drugs. It's boring as sin here, which is one of the reasons I started ordering speed online in the first place. I was always very cautious. I tumbled my bitcoins carefully and ensured that every transaction was very well encrypted. Yes, before you even ask, the proxies I used were fully configured and trustworthy ones. It wasn't the technology that failed me at all, actually. It was a single mistaken judgment. To a single trusted seller, I gave my real physical address. At first, I was only getting small packages for my personal use, so it was easy to have them delivered to the house of an old woman who lives nearby. Her live-in nurse consistently checked the mail very late in the day, so there was never much of an issue in retrieving the speed before it was noticed. But my habit grew, and I began to introduce my close friends to the drug. So eventually I contacted my seller about ordering much larger quantities, enough for me to sell locally. We began to work like business partners in a supply chain, and I was placing substantial orders regularly. The drugs came originally in a small padded envelope, but now it would have to be shipped in a larger cardboard box. The envelopes always fit easily inside a mailbox, but a box like this would have to be delivered to the front door. I couldn't have the mailman walking up to a stranger's driveway to ring the doorbell, so I requested that the drugs start being sent directly to me. I knew by this point that the seller was a legitimate and reliable source, so trusting him with my address just seemed safer than the alternative. We had become something like casual friends at this point, and began to do the same things together, like visit the same deep web communities and chat if we were both online. My seller was wickedly funny sometimes, and really seemed to be a nice guy. I guess that's part of why I trusted them. But then again, it's not his fault about what happened. Recently though, I got a totally unsatisfactory shipment. The pressed pills looked right at first, but tasted like bitter flour and were far too brittle. They produced no high at all. I had been stiffed, and when I checked the marketplace I found that my seller's accounts had been closed out. He left no messages to explain it. I assumed that he had just ripped me off, but it also didn't seem like something he would do. I wondered if I had misjudged him. Yesterday, I noticed that one of his accounts was actively posting on one of the small community forums that we both visited together. I contacted him immediately in a private message and asked whether he knew that his last batch was complete bunk. It took about 25 minutes before I got any response, but suddenly the messages began pouring in. It started with this: "The person you're trying to contact has passed away. Sorry. He's such a homebody. Nobody has knocked on his door the whole time I've been here. 3 whole weeks with no visitors. Isn't that funny? I'm almost done eating him. I wasted very little soft tissue. He had almost no food in the house when I killed him, so I didn't even need to clear out the fridge to store his meat. I haven't even needed to take out the trash yet. Isn't that sort of funny? I've been poking around his computer too. Going through his files is like solving a big puzzle cube. But I'm making progress." I wrote back and accused him of taking a weird joke too far. I told him that he at least owed me an explanation for the last shipment. His response: "They're bone meal. You never smelled bone meal? Did you never have a garden as a kid or anything? I thought that'd be obvious." His skeleton was the only thing I hadn't figured out what to do with yet. I realized that I could solve that issue and also play a little prank. Come on, don't you think that's a funny idea? There was a brief pause, and then another short volley of messages appeared before I could even form my response. "You know, you actually don't live too far away from where I am now. Judging by the address I have here, you and this guy are just over the state line from each other. Isn't that something?" Probably just a scheme to scare me off, right?